Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Both Matthew and Larry sent me emails saying, Steve, here's a story that's kind of a follow-up to a video you did. I did a video about whether or not stores are required to accept cash. And I pointed out at the time that the vast majority of businesses in America are not in places that are required to accept cash. That is, they can say if they want to, you have to pay with a credit card or debit card or some kind of plastic. And I've had people want to argue about that because they say, well, if you read the bills, they say right on them, legal tender and all that. But the point is that there actually is not a law that says that. So New York City apparently does have a law that says that businesses must accept cash under most circumstances. And this story is from the New York Post. Dean Balsamini and Connor Skelding wrote it. New York City businesses are told to pay up after not accepting cash. And yes, they're being fined. And they have to pay those fines, presumably, the equivalent of cash. The city rule makes no sense, however, according to Big Apple businesses, suffering under a ban on cashless establishments. So the city says you cannot be cashless. There's an upscale ice cream parlor, has been fined $12,750 in fines across all of its locations because they were not accepting cash. And they were one of many different businesses in the city who were fined for violating the ban that went into effect about a year ago. And I think my video is about a year old on this. So the city has fined 23 businesses for violating the cashless ban. The Department of Consumer and Worker Protection received 152 complaints about businesses not accepting cash. So 16 businesses have been found guilty by the City Office of Administrative Trials and Hearings and have been fined a total of $23,850. A councilman from Brooklyn said the crackdown is unfair, saying these agencies weaponize our statutes to torment small businesses in the city. This is about raising revenue for the city. Well, if you think the statute is unfair and you are a councilman, maybe you should do something about the statute. The city received a half a dozen complaints about the ice cream place since November 2020 when the ban went into effect, according to a spokesperson there, referring to the department. Under the law, stores must accept cash unless they have a machine to convert cash to a prepaid card, and they cannot charge more for paying in cash. City Council passed the cashless ban back in January of 2020 as more businesses went cashless to combat the spread of COVID. Supporters of the ban said cashless businesses discriminate against minors and poor people who may not have bank accounts or credit cards. The City of New York cannot allow the digital economy to leave behind the 25% of New Yorkers who are chronically unbanked and underbanked, said then Councilman Richie Torres from the Bronx. He was the bill's sponsor, and that's what he said at the time of its passage. In the ice cream parlor case, the city fired off a cease and desist letter to the ice cream chain, but it continued to ignore the law, according to Consumer Affairs spokesperson. So the businesses, when the complaints were made, were sent warning letters saying, here's what the law is, you need to comply with the law. And the allegation is that they ignored that letter and kept breaking the law. So I have a little less sympathy when someone gets the notice saying you are in violation of the law and here's what the law says. Now, is the law correct? It's not for me to say. The council people passed it. So, meanwhile, the owner and co-founder of the ice cream parlor denied the violation, saying he had not refused cash payment because no one has offered it. He says no one's offered them cash. But the city submitted affidavits and photographs of signs and windows saying they do not accept cash according to the decision that was made at the hearing. The co-owner of the business expressed his dismay that this provision of law exists. It was being enforced when there were more important problems in the world. I agree with that. There are more important problems in the world. But my channel is largely based on things where there are more important problems in the world, but it's still interesting to look at this kind of stuff. Elsewhere, a bookstore on Broadway on the Upper West Side was fined $500 after pleading guilty before the hearing panel. So some of these people, when they get caught, do say, yes, we were violating the rule, and we know it. We admit that, and we'll pay the fine. A woman who answered the phone at the bookstore Friday acknowledged there was a period where they did not accept cash, but said, we do now. We do now. Representatives of the restaurant industry noted the advantages of going cashless, particularly during a pandemic. The executive director of the New York City Hospitality Alliance says, "We understand the equity issue. However, going cashless presents operational opportunities for small businesses as well, especially in a time of COVID. Customers and workers may feel safer. Cash-free means some peace of mind for workers worried about the next smash-and-grab robbery." The president and CEO of the New York State Restaurant Association says not having cash on site would mean less likely to have any sort of theft. And then strictly, if everything was without cash, you wouldn't have to worry about anything getting misreported or miscounted. It takes away a lot of the human error on the accounting side. Consumer Affairs defended the enforcement action, saying cashless businesses isolate the more than 300,000 unbanked households in New York City from making transactions, as well as those who simply choose not to use plastic. So, I have mixed feelings about this for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is that if a business chooses to make things difficult for customers, those customers can go elsewhere, and they will. And so on some level, the marketplace will decide a lot of these issues. However, if there is something that's being offered here and the only alternative is way the heck over there, then it would be kind of a pain if they say, oh, by the way, we don't accept cash, and that's all you have is cash. And I've encountered the opposite. I've actually been in a place, and it's I walked into a little shop in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, in a little town I'm always talking about in my various shows. And I drive by the shop or walk by the shop probably a dozen times a year, if not more, because I spend so much time up there in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And one day I met a friend in there for coffee. Now, I don't drink coffee, but they had something else that I could imbibe. So we walk up the counter, order our drinks, and I tell my friend, I say, hey, I got this. I'm going to be a big spender. Whip out my wallet, and I go to hand a credit card over the counter. And the woman behind the counter, who's the owner of the business, by the way, looked at me with the most disdainful sneer and goes, we don't take plastic? Like, get that thing away. Don't point it at me. We don't take plastic. And like I said, she said it with such vitriol. Like, we don't take plastic. It's almost like I come in there and made an indecent proposal or something. All I'm trying to do is buy something from you, lady, okay? Take my money. And if you don't, say, I'm really sorry, but we're not equipped to take plastic. That's what you say. You if nothing else, you couch it in a way so the customer doesn't feel bad. She didn't care. She wanted me to feel bad because I so crazily and insanely thought that I could use a piece of plastic to pay for her valuable coffee? What, am I out of my mind? My friend goes, don't worry, I'll take care of it. Now, my friend, of course, thinks that I planned that so I'd get a free drink out of it. But I understand that if you run a business and you accept credit, plastic, okay, that the vendors who run the service to process the plastic take a slice. And I know that because I often sell books to viewers. And I sell books using Square. And Square is a credit card service where in the case of somebody buying a book over the internet, somebody sends me an email, I send them an invoice via Square, they pay with a credit card, and Square pays me. And I know I lose a slice to Square. But in exchange for that, Square handles it, and they direct deposit the money to my bank account. I do book signings where people walk up to me, they hand me cash. I take checks. I've never had a check bounce, by the way. I take checks and I take credit cards. And I have my smartphone and a card reader right there. People walk up and go, do you take credit cards? And think about where we've come as a society where people go to a book signing and actually think quite optimistically that the author might take credit cards. And I do. Say, yes, I do, sure. And I take the credit card, swipe it to the card reader. Here, sign my phone. They sign my phone. Boom. Same thing. Now, I understand as people who run businesses go, I don't want to lose a couple percent to a card reader fee. That's fine. I completely understand that. But there were no signs anywhere in the store that said we don't take credit cards or anything like that. And the main thing that got me was simply the way she said it. The way I had clearly insulted her. I had threatened her. I thought I was trying to buy something from her. she thought I was some city slicker up there trying to hornswoggle her into giving me something for a useless piece of plastic. I don't know. All I know is I felt silly, and then my friend took over. And my friend lives up there. I'm assuming went in later and apologized for me. So that my friend's from downstate. He doesn't understand up here that cash is good and plastic is of the devil. So with respect to businesses that won't take cash, I have had people say, but Steve, dollar bills say right on them, legal tender and all that. That's simply the point that if you get a bill from the government, for instance, it says you owe us money. They can't say you got to pay us in chickens. It's as simple as that. And your insurance company, they say you got to pay the bill, you got to pay them in dollars. Now, whether the dollars come in the form of a check and cash or plastic, but they're still dollars. They're still dollars. That's what makes dollars legal tender. And similarly, I've gone to a rallies before. I think it's a rallies where they have a big old sign. We don't take hundreds. We take 50s, not hundreds. And I remember one time I got to rallies. I pulled my wallet out. All I had was 100. I said, I'm really sorry. All I've got is this. Woman goes, sorry. I go, you can't take this? And she goes, nope. I said, okay, see ya. Drove off. Point is, there are some places that require businesses to take cash by law. And if they don't follow that law, they will get fined. And that's what's happening in New York City. As New York City businesses are told to pay up after not accepting cash. The New York Post ran the story, and Dean Balsamini and Connor Skelding wrote it. Matthew and Larry both sent it. Thanks a lot. Questions or comments? Put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. That's why I love road trips. It's like doing something without actually doing anything.